Hello and welcome back to the Wheel Talk podcast. My name is Abby Mickey. I am joined by Loren Rowney. Loren, hello.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Gracie Elvin, hello.
Hey. Lauren's intro kind of reminded me of the Truman Show. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Yeah. I used to love that movie.
We're here to talk about women's cycling. We're going to chat a little bit about the European Championships that went on last week. And yeah, that's about it. I used to say this a lot and I eventually gave up, but we're going to keep it short this week. Before we dive into the Europeans, this episode of the Wheel Talk podcast is brought to you by the members of the Escape Collective. Support Escape Collective in any way that suits you best by becoming a member with unlimited access to our web content, connect with editors on the Escape Community Discord, or stay in the loop with our weekly member newsletter. But if Discord isn't your thing and all you're really interested in is the site, you can become a reader, and that's all you get, access to the site. It's great. I mean, you can support us in what way you can, but also to the extent at which you're interested in participating in what Escape Collective has to offer. We've got a ton of great content on the site, a couple pretty good podcasts, one phenomenal one about women's cycling, but if you're listening to this, then you already know that. So become a member at escapecollective.com/join, and thanks to everyone who's already signed up. We haven't had any massive transfers this week, but we're still keeping an eye on that news, so we will keep everyone posted as they come. I suspect that there's a few big ones coming down the pipeline, so I'm excited to see what happens there. Kind of the biggest news on the transfer side, even though we don't know who she's riding for, is that Ruth Winder is returning to the professional women's peloton.
Yeah, that is really big news. She's just freshly retired. She just couldn't get enough of it.
I like that she said she just needed a sabbatical. It's a good way to say it.
I mean, Lotta Hentala, am I saying her last name right? Hentala? Mm-hmm. She retired, right? She wasn't just taking a sabbatical, and then she's come back and in between had a baby and all of that. So, yeah, sometimes you're just not done. And Ruth is by no means too old to be coming back. So she was actually in the prime of her career, I would say, those golden years around the 30s. And I'm sure she had reasons why she had to step away from the sport. And she's probably, well, I mean, Abby, you know her much better than I do. But maybe she just needed that, yeah, like you said, a sabbatical to sort some things out and realize maybe why you're doing it.
Yeah, I think she was one of those riders that puts a lot of pressure on themselves in the Olympic cycle, and she had so much focus on the Olympics, and whether or not you succeed at the Olympics, I feel like when there's pressure put on an event that only happens once every 4 years, that you have very little control over the outcome, it can burn you through. So I think for her finishing up the Olympics, and especially in the COVID years when the Olympics were postponed, it was good for her to step away from the sport for a bit. So I'm excited to see what coming back into the sport means for her and her outlook on cycling, because I think in the end there she wasn't loving it as much as she did earlier on in her career, but she's only 30. So yeah, she's got well, if you're on Annemiek van Vleuten, 11 more years. Yeah. So yeah, I think I'm excited to see where she goes. That news should be coming out relatively soon, possibly as you're listening to this podcast, it's already out. But yeah, she will be back in the peloton. Maybe we can chat with her, see what she's thinking ahead of this kind of rebirth of her career, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, I think that would be a really interesting interview for a lot of reasons, even if you weren't in that scenario at all. I think that she's had a lot of time to think, and some of the reasons why she retired were also really interesting at the time, and to hear that growth that she's had the last 2 years, I think that would be actually quite helpful for a lot of riders on a different journey to hear from, because ultimately it's about being happy and finding what works for you. And I think was able to just go home and just do home stuff, and she's still super fit. Like she did all the Lifetime Grand Prix and a bunch of the gravel stuff the last 2 years. So she's been training. It's not like she's coming back from zero again. But I think she's just figured out how to actually have fun. And that's so important, as we, say a lot.
Yeah. And I think Ruth is a rider who started really young. Correct me if I'm wrong. I remember racing in the US in 2012, and she was racing for Vanderkitten, and she must have been 18 then, because there's probably 5 years between us. And she was really good then, but she's like a name that really emerged, I would say, in her last years of racing. Like she's always been around, doing the combination of, I believe it was track and road at one point, and then becoming more road specific. So I think for junior riders, it would be an interesting listen too, just to how to manage if you want to have a sustainable career and have a long career, because I think some of these really talented young riders, like we saw, I think the young rider from the UK who's 17 has signed on with movie star Cat. I was going to say Cat Stevens, but that's an artist.
Yes, Cat Stevens.
Yeah, that guy. I think there's lots of lessons to be learned there. Now that it seems lots of young riders are jumping straight into these World Tour contracts with obviously a more of a development stage, but still it's a big thing.
Yeah. And also I think her career highlights that even if you're on the most coveted team Trek, it's not the be all end all, she wasn't happy, and there could be lots of reasons for that. But just being on a big team that everyone wants to be on doesn't mean that you're going to have a great career. So I think that she might come into a different type of team, different culture, and she might thrive in a different environment.
And I believe she's racing Gravel Worlds. So
who isn't? Yeah. Speaking of, didn't I just see Annemiek's lining up for it?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
You did see that. You saw that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Everyone's just like, damn it.
We'll talk about Gravel Worlds. I roped Heidi Franz into doing a podcast about Gravel Worlds, so we're going to hear from someone who's in the scrum. So I'm excited for that in the weeks to come. But I guess also on the transfer-ish side, the news came out today, Tuesday, as we're recording, that DSM re-signed 3 of their riders. Unsurprisingly, Pfeiffer Georgie, Francesca Koch, and Charlotta Kuhl all re-signed with the team, and I feel like they are riders that, like, you either sink or swim in the DSM environment, and they're 3 riders that have really swum. So I'm excited to see them continuing with the team, because I feel like in this kind of new era of that team, I think that they're doing really well with their riders, the way they're treating their riders, and also you can see it in the way that they race. So I am excited about these renewals, and I think I'm excited to see how that team continues to grow. Sweet. Should we talk about Europeans? I'm so excited to talk about this race.
I have to admit, I rewatched it because I did not get a chance on the day. But then after seeing your messages, I was like, yeah, okay, if she's getting this excited about a race, I have to watch it. And when you often think about Drenthe, I don't know, people have mixed feelings about that region and the races that usually go on there in the early spring.
Because it's cold.
I don't know. The racing can be really exciting there, even though it's pancake flat and you have that one random trash hill. It seems to bring out the best in people, and sometimes you just see these incredible breakout performances, which I'm sure we're going to get into.
But it's exactly what we love, Loren. It's a circuit, and it's a circuit that involves a hill, and so that means that it's always going to be like super fun and
aggressive.
I liked that the finish wasn't right after, like right at the top of the hill. Like they've had the Sex Toys race had a finish at the very top of that hill. That was Leonica Uniken, I think, won that stage, but it was a super aggressive stage, like totally wild. SC Works trying to get the jersey off of Ellen Van Dyke. Like it was a great stage to watch. And yeah, that was when they've also had, I think the Nationals have finished at the top But the nationals have also finished where the finish was for the Europeans when Rihanna Marcus won it. So I was glad that they didn't finish it at the top of the hill, because I feel like that limits who can win it a lot more. And since they still had like a little bit of a descent, it wasn't even that long from the top, that far from the top, but it still added like a little bit of an extra dynamic to the race that I really enjoyed. And I feel like, yeah, you look at where it is and like think about the race, like, oh man, Europeans in the Netherlands, like it's gonna be a sprinter. It's gonna like be this team with the most numbers, which it was, but it was still such an exciting race. And like, I think that course is just selective enough. It's not like the Worlds was like bonkers. That was an insanely selective course. But it's also not like a sprint finish like we had last year when Lorena Wiebes won. It's like just selective enough for a really exciting race that is wide open. And it could have been another Lorena Wiebes victory, but it also could have been many, many other people. And I feel like that made for a really interesting race.
I see the key point there, but I guess we want to get to the debate point at the end. I'm curious what our 3 different opinions are going to be on the Dutch tactics. It was a really, really aggressive race. There was some fantastic racing from a few different riders and teams, and like it was a lot of the usuals that were up there. And this is the last European race of the year, so this was it for these riders, for most of them. So to see them just like throw it all down was really impressive. And you know, the Dutch raced again well together, and then there were some mistakes there, but they obviously managed to rectify that in the end with Misha Bredewald coming around with the win and a second as well on the podium. But I thought the Swiss were really strong again. Marlon Rusa, questionable tactics at times, but I'm trying to think. There were some standout riders, and I should have written their names down.
I said before the race that Soraya Paladin should have been Italy's hope for a result. And I hold to that. Like, I think Elisa Balsamo was riding super well, and she's obviously come into form after like a horrendous start to the year. And it was a bummer that she crashed. I'm glad she's okay. Like that, she crashed also in Tour Scandinavia, and that one looked super gnarly. And this one also looked like really, it was, at least the grass looks soft, but the barriers, like, man, I want to like wrap her in bubble wrap or something, because she
just looked like her front wheel went out. It wasn't even, I didn't even think she was going that fast around the corner. But
no, I think I think she scrubbed her speed a lot going into the corner, and that may have been the problem. But Soraya Paladin, I thought, rode an interesting race, and it would have gone better had the Dutch not been so strong. But that move that she was in with Elise Chabi, like that was
dangerous.
Yeah, it was a great move for her to give it a try. But I do think that Italy should have just been like, okay, Soraya, save everything for the last like 2 to 3 laps. You're the one we're riding for. Because I think that she's proved this year that she is really diverse. She's very good at riding very different things. Like, she can climb decently well. She's got a great kick on her. She does like a good lead out. And I feel like if you looked at the rest of their roster, there wasn't really anyone besides Balsamo that has proven this year to be riding well this year. I feel like this is a problem that happens a lot, where nations go in and they're like, okay, well, we have our top rider, but maybe they have had a shit season. And they maybe were the top rider for 5 years. But if they're not riding well right now, you need to change up your tactics. And I think Italy maybe didn't look at their riders and be like, well, Soraya Paladin's had arguably the best season of the lot, and we should probably give her a chance. Because I think like Sylvia Persico was amazing last year, but this year's been a little bit of a letdown. I think it's just because she's developing. I don't think it has anything to do with, like, it's not a bad thing at all. It just happens. And so I had mixed feelings seeing her up the road, but I still hold to that. I'm impressed with her as a rider this year. And I think, like, had things gone differently, it could have been her day. I guess you could say that about a lot of people.
There were some riders as well that I thought were a little more quiet than they usually have been in previous races, but that's maybe just because it's been a long season and it's the last race. Because Cecile, I thought she was a bit quiet. I actually forgot she was in the race. Emma Norsgaard, I think, had a great finish to the race. Some really brave moves there. And then Cassia Nuadoma as well was a rider who usually is very aggressive. She's got nothing to lose in a course like this, and she didn't really have as much support maybe if she would have liked. So, yeah, for her it was a quieter race too.
Man, the Polish team had 7 riders, and then at one point, like, they entered the circuits. They did one circuit, and then 4 of them were out the back. And I was like, oh, sorry, Kasia,
But this is that race, right? Like, it's whenever you do any sort of race around there, if it's, wind is often a defining factor of racing in the Drenthe region. And actually this year it looked like there wasn't so much wind at all, so it didn't impact the race as much as it could have. Because imagine if it was windy like we know in the spring, then it just throws a whole nother element, and maybe we would have seen a different winner. That said, I think the Dutch still had 5 in that front group of 10 or 11 at the end. So it was a numbers game, and that's just where they always come out on top.
I just think, look at the top 20. That reflects how people rode that day. I think it was a very honest finishing list. The Dutchies were almost always in control the whole day from kilometre 0. They were on the front, setting the tempo, keeping their riders out of trouble, preventing a few things happening early as they got through that bigger lap. It wasn't super technical, but technical enough that they just kept that in nice control. And then they were putting riders in moves. They were attacking. They always had the numbers. So yeah, they had 1 and 2 on the podium. Next off the rank was the Belgian team. Of course, Lotte Kopecky is an outstanding rider at the moment, but she actually had some really great support from the Belgian national squad. So definitely worth noting them. I'm really enjoying seeing the Belgians come together every opportunity now, because we haven't talked about them until really this year. Lotte Kopecky's, been getting better and better the last few years, but she's actually got some good support now, and you're seeing that Belgian jersey quite a lot. So I was really impressed with a few riders on that squad. The British too, I saw Anna Henderson heaps. She was really active all day. She's been on some really good form the last few months, so it was nice to see her kind of give those last biscuits that she's had left at the last bit of the season. I hope she doesn't have to go to China. But so with her and Pfeiffer Georgie in the top 10, I think that was probably just what they were capable of that day. I think that's a really excellent results. Unfortunate they didn't get on the podium, but with those other 3, you can't say that they didn't put up a good fight. And the Italians, they just weren't that organized, didn't quite have the firepower. And I agree with you both. They probably just could have had a better leader on the day.
Yeah.
And the Swiss, of course, you've already mentioned that, but they work pretty well together. But whenever I see Xabi and Rusa race together, it's like they've had half a conversation. Like it just doesn't quite click, and it's frustrating because they're both so good.
They're just so strong, and
there's a language barrier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, isn't Rusa, is she German speaking?
I was joking.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, oh yeah, they speak multiple languages in that country. 3.
Man, that's actually a good point. I had not. It's a bad country to make that joke about.
No, but yeah, that is a good point. Like, again, Rusa and Xabi were on a brilliant day. They were phenomenal. The amount of moves that they were in, the moves that were brought back, they're just 2 riders. So it does feel like if they could coordinate a little better and maybe had 1 extra Swiss rider, I think they would be pretty hard team to beat as well. Just in terms of the strength.
Like they're doing really well. It's just like their timing is just a little bit off together. So close.
Shabby could have attacked when Bredewald attacked after they brought back Reusser's like 30th move of the day. And maybe it wouldn't have succeeded because the reason that Bredewald succeeded is because she was Dutch. And so they didn't chase her right away. But it was still such a good moment. And I agree with you, Gracie. It's like they're just one step off of each other. But I also think that Reusser she knows how to race. Because we've seen her win World Tour races this year. But she's still pretty relatively new to racing. And I think that her strength and her tactical knowledge don't match up yet. Because I think that she wasted a lot of energy on Saturday attacking over and over and over again. And she doesn't have a good enough kick to get away. So she needs to find another way to use her energy. It just wasn't an effective use of her matches, of her power, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think we've seen that before. I think sometimes when you've got that much horsepower to give, then sometimes you don't budget it that well. You kind of just throwing out chips at the casino the whole night, and then you just can't really put it all on red when you want to.
That was a great analogy.
Yeah, that was a good one. I had two chips.
Yeah. But that's it. Like
use them wisely.
Yeah, but that's how you learn to race, when you know you've only got a certain amount of chips to play with. And I think that sometimes it's a bit of a curse to be super strong, because you just don't learn as quickly as those of us that had to be a bit more clever.
Now I'm hungry.
Chips.
But Bredewald, I don't know if we want to go into her actual move and her winning the race, but she was really active in the race as well. The whole Dutch team was. She was in moves herself, and then I think the timing of when she went was brilliant, because it was like you had the 5 Dutchies, and then out of all of them, I think she was the one rider that sometimes is probably still what's the word? Overlooked a little bit. Who's another rider that we always say people just overlook them? The Colombian rider. No.
Oh, Arlena
Sierra. Yeah.
Yeah. Cuban.
And I think it was also just that time where there was going to maybe be a lull, because there'd just been so much action, and we were approaching the last 10 kilometers or so of the race. So everyone's starting to really think about the finish and realizing, Wiebes is still there, Kopecky is there. And if it had just come to the bottom as a group, then naturally it was going to be one of those 2 riders. But when she went, she got a huge gap really quickly, which shows that the bunch did a massive hesitation. There was zero reaction. And I wonder if that had been Rihanna Marcus or one of the other riders, like Demi, who'd been very active and done a ton of work that day, I don't think we would have seen the same gap go out like that.
I don't know. I think we would have. I think pretty much any Dutch rider could have done that move. And because I think her timing was just impeccable. Like, she
went straight through the middle of the bunch.
It was such a weird attack.
Was my favorite thing.
I know. I said it in my race report. I was like, kids, don't ever try this at home, because it's not going to work. Like, you never attack from the middle. She had to weasel her way through multiple of her teammates to you saw her kind of just sneak by Rihanna Marcus and then just accelerate out of the middle of the pelotonists. It was the weirdest thing, and it shouldn't have worked, but I think it worked because there had just been a ton of action. They'd just brought back multiple moves. There had just been multiple attacks. It had been really fast up to that point. So when she went, it was right when they were re-bunching for a second. And so there was still a bunch of riders off the back. It was still strung out. There were groups coming back together. And I think that just no one expected to see it happen. And I also think that, like I said, she's Dutch. The only team with the numbers was the Dutch. Like the Belgians are getting better and better and better. And it's, I think, part of the Lotte Kopecky effect. But they still can't organize as quickly as the Dutch.
No, and I think, I mean, Kopecky was alone there. I think who had representation? There was the Dutch, and then the Swiss had two. And then was it just ones?
I think
the British
so.
had two.
Just like maybe ones, but they weren't anywhere near each other. Like
yeah, so
if there was any representation other than one rider, they weren't anywhere where they could. You would have had to be really thinking on your feet to react to her. I think the only reason that Demi would have been less successful is because Kopecky is marking her. But Kopecky's not marking Bredewald. She also wouldn't probably have been marking.
No, Wiebes and Kopecky were like
glued
stuck to each other the whole race.
Yeah.
One
and you
wasn't
never
going.
saw them.
Yeah, exactly. One wasn't going anywhere without the other. But yeah, with Bredewald, yeah, okay, I thought it was perfect timing as well, great attack. And when she went, I did think that it was over by then. And there was merely going to be a race for second. But I'm curious about your debate with Tom's, Abby.
So after the race, I was like really excited that Bredewald had won. Obviously, she's been to see Taylor Swift in concert, so I have a soft spot for her from the beginning. She saw the 1989 World Tour, which is just very cool. Her favorite song is Wildest Dreams, but she was quick to tell me that she no longer listens to Taylor Swift because she's an adult. And I was like, well, to each their own. Travis Kelce listens to Taylor Swift, and he's doing just fine. Anyway, so I was really happy to see her win. And I think part of that is just because although I'm not yet tired of seeing Lorena Wiebes win, because she's winning in sprints, but she's also winning in really exciting ways. Like the second stage she won at Scandinavia was epic. Like, I think that I'm not as tired of her winning as Vollering winning. I have no basis for this. This is just pure gut feeling and bias, and you can take it as you will. I'm allowed to have opinions. This is my podcast, damn it.
I agree. I was happy to see her win, and the emotion. So
I was like, yeah. So I was thrilled to see if it was going to be a Dutch victory. I was so happy that it wasn't Wiebes or Vollering, because I think the two of them have won a ton this year. Like, they have just been winning and winning and winning and winning. So I liked that it wasn't Wiebes or Vollering that won. And I think that's because I do have a little bit of exhaustion about those two. And I also liked that it wasn't Kopecky, because she's the world champion. And had she won, we wouldn't have seen the European jersey in the peloton at all next year, because Euros happens before Worlds. So we literally wouldn't see it. So because she would be in the world champ jersey all season. So I was happy that Bredewald won because she's a young rider. She's really exciting. It seems like she's on flying form at the butt end of this season with her win in Plouay. And she wasn't one of our regular names. And I think it was always going to be a Dutch rider with the strength that they had. I'm just glad it wasn't the ones that we're used to. However, after the race, I got into a debate with my husband about whether her move was okay, because the plan was for Wiebes. And we could see that from the very beginning of the race. You had Vollering even like working on the front when there were moves up the front. Bredewald and Lozada were doing a ton of work. Rihanna Marcus was doing a ton of work. Wiebes was the only one sitting in the wheels. There was attacks from Rihanna Marcus and Bredewald earlier on in the day, but they weren't the kind of attacks that are going to win the race. They were just kind of to speed things up and get things going. It was really, really clear that they were all in for Wiebes, regardless of what Vollering said in her pre-race interview, which was that they have cards to play. I think I'm adding that to my list of things, like from strength to strength. Every time someone says, oh, we have cards to play, you have to, I don't know, eat a cookie. So the debate that we had was the move okay? Because she won the race And we had this weird moment where Bredewald was off the front. Vollering was chasing because they were riding for Wiebes. And people were like, and I was like, what is Vollering doing? She's chasing down her own teammate. That is so lame. But then after the race, it was like, okay, but wait, she was doing the race plan. She was leading out Wiebes into the climb so that she could take the win. Wiebes was second. Had Bredewald not been off the front, perhaps she would have won. We never know. But it was, you saw this weird thing going on at the finish where all the SC Works riders who weren't Dutch went and gave Bredewald a hug. We saw her get hugs from Rihanna Marcus. We saw her get a hug from Marlon Reusser. We saw her get like a fist bump from Lotte Kopecky, but we didn't see Vollering or Wiebes go up and congratulate her. And on the podium, Wiebes was visibly not stoked. So was the move okay or not? She went against the team plan, but she won. Right?
I mean, the thing is, like, okay, so there's no race radios. Yes, you have a race plan. This is just purely my opinion. You have 5 in a group of 10 or 11. I think it was like 11. Or even if it was 12 or 15, you have the odds there. And she was just racing on instinct at that moment. I don't know. She saw a lull and she went for it, and it made for better racing than what would have happened. Other riders would have attacked, the Dutch would have shut them down and then ridden to the base of the Vanberg and then raced up it. And then you're not guaranteed that Wiebes would have beat Kopecky on that finish. Like this is the smartest way to race. You've got the numbers. Actually, every single one of those Dutch riders that were in the group could have pulled it off, like we've said. So for me, it wasn't selfish. I mean, that's just, generally speaking, that's how you race when you have the numbers like that in a group. And again, you don't have someone over the radio saying, all right, we're just going to keep it all together now and race to the bottom. I think even that had a risk.
She even said after the race that she attacked and then she was like, oh, fuck, that wasn't the plan. She said the F word, not me. That wasn't the plan. And then she was like, well, I'll just keep going because then Demi and
puts pressure on,
and Lorena can just sit in. And then she didn't think until she was on the Vanberg that, okay, I can actually maybe win this. Like when she attacked, she was going on instinct, which is great, especially for a young rider who's like newer to racing. She's Dutch, so she's got more experience than most 23-year-olds her age. It almost makes it more impressive that she won purely on instinct at that moment. But my initial reaction to Demi pulling on the front was negativity. But I think now looking back on it, it's like, okay, well, she was still just executing the plan. Although I think like if Kopecky had sprinted around, if they had caught Bredewald and Kopecky had won, we would be having a different conversation about the Dutch tactics.
Yeah, I don't think that like Demi was even riding back. She was just setting a pretty hard tempo, but she was controlling it and just keeping Lorena in the wings and protected. I think, I'm sure like of course you want to win the race, but I don't know, I completely agree with Loren as well of like, well, if you have the numbers, you need to use them more often than not. And who's the biggest threat? It's Kopecky. What do you do with the biggest threat? You isolate her and then you force her to make decisions. And that's exactly what they were doing. And Bredewald wasn't the only one attacking. Rihanna Marcus was attacking and following heaps. Even Vollering was attacking in a couple of moments there. So like the whole Dutch team were making that race hard one way or the other. And they were forcing other teams to make decisions. And they were trying to whittle down that group. And they did that exceptionally well. And Bredewald was just the one that had the best timing and the best time of the race to do it and pulled it off. So I don't think it was selfish at all. I think that it might not have been the plan, but I'm sure that they would have talked through the scenarios of let's make it as hard as we can in certain moments and make it aggressive. And I don't know, I don't think she would have been in trouble for that.
No, I think the national coach would have been, we've won. Yeah. Someone wearing the jersey won today. And I mean, for SD Works, the jersey remains in their team. It's just, I think Lorena, okay, she didn't look super chuffed on the podium. She just wants to win. And I think at any opportunity that she doesn't, it still really stings, even if it is a teammate that you should be happy for. But that just shows a little bit of maybe immaturity too.
Maybe, yeah.
But I was stoked. I mean, come on. Gracie picked her to win. She won. And it was like, just, it's nice to have someone else in the jersey. So I like the way that it panned out. It was a great race to watch. And, you know, I think there can be some pretty happy people going into the off season and some who will need to work on some stuff for 2024.
Their bags for China, because we still got 2 World Tour races.
Yeah.
Got some good news, ladies.
Poor souls.
Worth mentioning that Marlon Reusser won again the time trial during the week, so she'll stay as the European champion in the ITT. Anna Henderson was second, which is phenomenal for her. I think, yeah, she just keeps getting better and better. Although if you just take Chloe Duggar, no, because Reusser wasn't. Yeah, great ride. Christina Schweinberger again, third, so another podium for her. Really great end of the season she's having. The U23 was another Dutch rider, although not, I think, one that we would have picked again, with Ilse Plumers winning for AG, well, for the Netherlands, but she rides for AG Insurance Soudal Quickstep during the regular season. Anna Shackley second, so hat tip to Matt Deneve, because that's who he picked for the U23 race. And Zoe Backstead won the time trial earlier in the week for the U23s. Should we wrap it up with what we're obsessed with?
Sure.
Who wants to go first?
I won't go first. I've got to try and think, actually.
Yeah, me too. I did even try and think about it beforehand, but I didn't think of anything yet. I was like, I need some pressure.
I have something that I'm obsessed with, but I'm honestly embarrassed that I'm obsessed with it. But I'm the one who started this game, so I will say it. So you guys know when you have a friend and they're super interested in something, but they don't live in the same country as you. So you need to like actively work on communicating with them. And sometimes their obsession with something, you have to kind of follow along in order to have something to text them about every day.
Not really, but I understand. I've never had that, but yes, continue.
I just need something to talk to one of my friends about. So she's really into reality TV. And I was like, okay, well, Tom's was away at a race. And I was like, I'll just watch the Kardashians on Hulu or Disney Plus, depending where you are. Because I was like, I need to be able to talk to Becca about her reality TV thing. And the Kardashians was the only one that I could access in Europe. And now I stayed up until freaking 2 a.m. watching the Kardashians like 3 nights in a row. I did. And
did your brain melt?
Yes. And I was
like, God, Abby, you're such a good friend.
Instagram, because
I would
now
never do that.
I know, but now I'm like obsessed, and I'm like, I hate this.
Oh no!
I hate this now. This is a terrible.
That's the worst people should be obsessed with. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I know.
It's so addictive, though. I do get it. I understand. It's so
addictive. I want to like suction it out of my brain, but now that it's there, I can't. Now that it's there. You know.
Do you know what reality? Like, I'm not really into reality TV shows, but while I wait for the news to start at 7 p.m., sometimes I'm like, there needs to be a 15-minute filler here. Married at First Sight Australia is here on Belgium TV. No. I've never watched it. And, man, you can go down the rabbit hole with that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, even Hannes enjoys it. It's a bit tragic, but it's just good watching. Yeah.
I knew someone that was on one of the series of
really?
Married at First Sight, yeah.
Were they successful?
Yeah, they're still together, kind of.
Oh, wow.
I think. I'm not a big reality TV person, but I used to love Farmer Wants a Wife because it was like really sweet, like right at the start. Like actually any reality TV show used to be good when it was like the first season, like 10 years ago, when it wasn't so like fame driven. And then I found out through my Dutch teammate, Loes Gunnewijk, that show is like super successful in the Netherlands because it's just not a very big country. So city girls moving out to the country actually works because they're not that far from the city.
Yeah.
Whereas in Australia, if you move out to the country, you're like thousands of kilometers away from anywhere, and it just doesn't quite work. So I always thought that was kind of funny. Like they have like a 90% success rate or something, and there's like dozens of children that have been like come out of those marriages.
I love that. It's the same here in Belgium. The Farmer Wants a Wife. And actually the town I live in, that the girl from this town, she met a farmer. He's Belgian, but like, I don't know, they filmed in Australia or something. And then I don't know if she was flown over there. They're still together. They have babies now. So
it's like the old Bachelor. Like back when The Bachelor was new, it worked, and now all the contestants that win The Bachelor or The Bachelorette break up within sometimes like a week.
Well, the podcast, my dirty little secret podcast, Life Uncut, that's like my easy listening stuff where I don't have to think. Laura, who's one of the hosts, she is one of the successful Bachelor contestants, and she is married to Maddie J, and they have 2 girls.
The best reality TV remains Survivor.
Yeah.
I'm not embarrassed to watch Survivor, but I'm embarrassed that I'm obsessed with the Kardashians, for sure.
So you're just doing it for your friend, Abby. It's a fake obsession.
And it's worked. I've been texting her for like 3 days straight about Skims and the Kardashians. It's been amazing.
Good job.
Maybe I'd have more friends if my commitment to friendship was as good as yours, Abby.
You know, like you get older and like I have a job, she has a job, we both have kids. You don't have time to like. Plus, she lives in Colorado. Other things. Yeah. So I was like, we need something to text about every day. So I will.
Is this the Becca that ran LA Sweat?
She was on LA Sweat, and she was the designer for them. Yeah.
That's right.
She has a kombucha company now. Mortal Kombucha, like Mortal Kombat, but Mortal Kombucha. She's very witty.
That's good.
Anyway, obsessions?
Do you have an obsession, Loren?
Actually, is it an obsession? We'll just say it's an obsession, but it's not really, because I'm not really one who's into clothing and fashion and stuff. But I am getting married in 5 weeks. And so I have been looking for really non-traditional wedding dresses. And I found one on the weekend, which I guess I could say I'm obsessed with. It's a burgundy color. And then, there'll be more to come. I'll make sure I share photos when that day finally arrives. But I will be 7 months pregnant. So not going for the traditional white. And it's a bit sexy, the dress.
Ooh. I can't wait to see photos.
I like that you didn't go for the white. That's a good choice.
I think I'm going to wear these black boots as well that I bought. So we'll see.
Yeah.
It's really non-traditional.
Nice. I love it. I'll say my obsession is kind of like 2 obsessions in one. And I love reading, and I'm currently really enjoying gardening, and I've been reading gardening books. But like good ones. There's this author that I love. His name's Michael Pollan, and he's written quite a number of books about lots of stuff. He started off as a garden writer, and he ended up writing some very famous books now on psychedelics and other psychoactive plants like caffeine, opium, mescaline. So I've enjoyed tearing through a lot of his books, and the one I'm reading currently is about the humble home garden, and he just makes it very funny but also very educational. And yeah, I'd highly recommend him as an author if you're into learning about natural cool stuff. Good
recommendation. I've just Googled him. I'm hoping,
Yeah.
Gracie, that next year I will be like into garden stuff.
Yeah, I hope so too. It's very nice. I've been enjoying it. It makes you feel good. Yeah. And I ate rocket today in my lunch. That was from my garden. And it's just so
I love
nice.
that. I love that. Also,
But currently my garden
are great for kids.
Yeah.
It keeps them busy. So I'm looking forward to that, because the garden I have right now is just a beautiful wild jungle. But when we move into the house that we've actually bought, it will be a smaller garden. But like I mentioned, I think in the last podcast, I'll have a little greenhouse. So that will be Project 2024.
Can't wait to hear
something
about
to look forward to.
Yeah. Future podcast.
I'll send you some books.
We're going to become a mom gardening podcast.
I was actually going to suggest we start, like, you know how you've got the album files? We could have like a completely separate
podcast, the three of us.
Just what you're obsessed with, but just for a whole hour.
Yeah. I think people would love it, to be honest.
With intermittent mom stuff.
All right. Well, we'll be back next week. Thanks everyone for listening, and thanks you too, as always.